I'm 90 years old. That sentence still feels strange to say out loud. Not because I don't believe it, but because for most of my life, I truly thought I would never get here. When you're young, 90 sounds abstract. It sounds like a number that belongs to other people. People you don't know. People you don't imagine becoming. I used to think time moved slowly, that there would always be another chance to fix things, another year to say what mattered, another season to become the person I kept telling myself I'd be one day. But that's not how it works. Time doesn't announce itself. It doesn't warn you when something is about to become the last time. One day, you're busy living, and the next, you're looking back, wondering how decades slipped through your hands so quietly. I'm not here to scare you, and I'm not here to give advice from a pedestal. I'm here because there are 5 things I learned very late, and if I had known them earlier, my life wouldn't have been perfect, but it would have been more honest. These days, my mornings are slow. I wake up before the sun, not because I want to, but because my body does it for me now. I sit at the small kitchen table with a cup of tea I sometimes forget to drink. The house is quiet, too quiet. The clock on the wall ticks louder than it used to. Most of the people who knew the younger version of me are gone. My parents, my wife, friends I once thought I'd grow old alongside. When you reach this age, memories stop feeling like stories. They feel like rooms you can still walk into. And there are moments, ordinary ones, that return more often than the big milestones. A conversation I brushed off, a choice I postponed, a silence I thought didn't matter. Those are the moments that taught me the most, but only after it was too late to change them. Lesson 1, I thought I had more time. For most of my life, I believed time was generous. I grew up in a small town where days felt long and predictable. My father used to sit on the porch every evening after work, shoes off, just watching the street. When I was in my 20s, he once asked me to stay a little longer one night. Sit with me, he said, just for a few minutes. I remember checking my watch. I had plans, friends waiting, a life that felt urgent. Another time, Dad, I said. I'll come by this weekend. There was nothing dramatic about that moment. No argument, no tension, just a small delay. That weekend didn't happen. Neither did the next. Life filled the space quickly work, marriage, bills, children. Years passed without me noticing the gap widening. When my father got sick, I told myself I'd make it up to him then. We'd talk. We'd sit like he used to want. But illness doesn't slow down to match your intentions. I arrived at the hospital late one afternoon. The room smelled like disinfectant and old paper. He was asleep when I got there. His breathing was shallow. I sat in the chair, suddenly aware of how quiet everything was. He never woke up. People say, at least you were there. But I wasn't there when it mattered most. I learned then that time doesn't run out loudly. It runs out quietly while you're busy assuming there will be more. Lesson 2, I believed being strong meant staying silent. I was taught early that strength meant endurance. You worked, you provided, you didn't complain. When my wife and I were newly married, We argued, like most couples do, about money, about plans, about things neither of us understood yet. But whenever something bothered me deeply, I swallowed it. I told myself I was protecting the peace, that speaking up would only cause problems. There was a night I remember clearly. I had just come home from work, exhausted and frustrated. Dinner was cold. The kids were loud. I felt invisible. My wife asked, "Is something wrong?" And I said, "No, I'm fine." That became my favorite lie. Over time, those unspoken feelings didn't disappear. They hardened. They turned into distance, into impatience, into a quiet resentment I didn't recognize until much later. One evening, years after that first lie, my wife said something that stunned me. "I don't know what you feel anymore," she said softly. "I don't even know if you're happy with me." I had been trying to look strong. What I had actually been doing was slowly disappearing. I learned far too late that silence isn't strength. It's avoidance wearing a respectable mask. Lesson 3. I confused success with worth. For a long time, I measured myself by what I achieved: my job title, my income, the way others spoke about me. I thought that if I could just reach a certain level, I'd finally feel settled inside. There was a promotion I chased for years. I worked late nights, missed birthdays, skipped vacations. When I finally got it, I came home and placed the offer letter on the kitchen counter like it was a trophy. My wife smiled and said, "That's wonderful." At first, but our youngest son looked up from the table and asked, "Does this mean you'll be home even less?" I laughed it off, said something about it all being worth it. But later that night, lying in bed, that question echoed louder than the congratulations. Success gives you applause, but it doesn't tuck your children in. It doesn't sit beside your spouse in the quiet moments. I reached many of the goals I set for myself. What surprised me was how empty some of them felt once I arrived. Lesson 4. I assumed love would always be there. Love feels permanent when it's familiar. I thought as long as my wife and I were together, there would always be time for tenderness, for patience, for saying, "I appreciate you." We didn't fight much. We also didn't try much. Routine took over. Meals were eaten in front of the television. Conversations became logistical. We shared a house, but not always our inner lives. There was a morning, years before she passed, when she reached for my hand while we were walking. I remember thinking, I should do this more. I didn't. When illness came, it moved fast. Hospital visits replaced evening walks. Silence replaced routine. After she was gone, I found her old sweater folded in the closet, still carrying her scent. That's when it hit me. Love doesn't disappear suddenly. It fades through neglect long before it's gone. And once it's gone, there are no do-overs. I thought I'd figure it all out someday. I spent most of my life waiting for clarity. I thought one day I'd wake up and feel certain about who I was, certain about what mattered. That day never came. Instead, what came were choices made in motion, imperfect decisions, moments of courage mixed with hesitation. At 90, I can tell you this: you don't arrive at understanding, you practice it. You don't become wise all at once. You become honest slowly. The people who seem to have it all figured out are usually just moving forward despite the uncertainty. I wish I had stopped waiting sooner. When you reach this age, regrets don't shout. They whisper. They show up in quiet rooms, in unanswered questions, in moments you replay not because they were dramatic, but because they were ordinary. I don't regret my entire life. I lived. I loved. I tried. But I wish I had understood sooner that life isn't something you prepare for. It's something you participate in fully, imperfectly now. If you're younger than me, and you are, there are things you still have time to say. Say them. There are people you still have time to sit with. Sit with them, not later, not someday. Now, if something in this story stayed with you, I hope you'll take a moment and reflect on it. You don't need to change everything. Just one small choice today is enough. If you'd like, share in the comments what lesson reached you the most. Sometimes reading each other's reflections helps us feel less alone. And if you want to hear more stories like this, quiet, honest, human, you're welcome to stay. Thank you for listening.